Senate Judiciary and House Judiciary. I do first want to apologize. I got the number wrong in the room number. So we're here, obviously, instead of in 512. So thank you, everybody. We're going to start with, and the first thing I think we'll be talking about is House Bill 2144. But I'm going to call on the revisers to go ahead and just give us an overview of everything that we have in conference together, just so we have it and we kind of know where we're headed. So I will, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair, I will turn that over to the revisers.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So before you have the chart that shows everything you have in conference, kind of like we do every year since the Senate bills were last in the House and the House bills were last in the Senate. I'll kind of go through the Senate bills and describe what the House has done to them. And then Jason will go through the House bills and describe what the Senate has done to those. So we'll start with House sub for Senate Bill 232. This bill directs the Secretary for Children and Families to consider foster parents as prospective adoptive parents under certain circumstances. And you can see the Senate version had the establishment of the Office of the Child Advocate as an independent state agency. And there it also has making orders granting custody for adoption subject to the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. It directs the Secretary for Children and Families to consider that foster parent as a prospective adoptive parent. It also authorizes an appeal and provides for retroactivity of those orders. And then it requires the Secretary to report on certain data on adoptions. And then last, it authorizes an appeal of any order of placement of a child and provides for retroactivity. The House substituted that bill. And so that first section about the Office of the Child Advocate is not in the House version of the bill. Section 2 is the same as the Senate version with relation to the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. Section 3 is the House committee is the same, except that the appeal process and the provision for retroactivity were removed on the House floor. And then the fourth item, that authorizing the appeal, is not present in the House version. So that is Senate Bill 232. House sub for Senate Bill 349 continues into existence certain exceptions to the disclosure of public records under the Open Records Act. This is our annual open records exception bill as introduced in the Senate. This is a bill that concerned passenger rail service programs, and it established the intercity passenger rail service program. The House substituted it and inserted the contents of House Bill 2805. That's the open records bill. They did make one amendment to some of the commerce reporting exclusions, and that is reflected in this version. Okay, so Senate Bill 458. This is the civil asset forfeiture bill, specifying that certain offenses don't give rise to forfeiture. I think you're all pretty familiar with this bill. If you look on the House version, that those underlined portions essentially highlight the differences. So the differences between the House and Senate version are the House version does not contain the provision providing persons involved the ability to request a jury trial. The Senate version prohibits federal adoption, and the House version does not. And then finally, the Senate version requires KBI to submit forfeiture reports to the legislature, and the House version does not. So you can see those changes. Senate Bill 473 authorizes a notice to appear that meets certain requirements to serve as a lawful complaint. It also has some bail bonds, minimum bond premium provisions. So the Senate version dealt with the authorizing a notice to appear that meets certain requirements to serve as a lawful complaint. The House kept those provisions, but they added Section 2 from House Bill 2755, which requires a minimum appearance bond premium in district court. It provides reasons for suspending or terminating authorization of a surety, and it authorizes the chief judge of a judicial district to require sureties to submit to background checks. And then the last of the Senate bills you have is Senate Bill 500, which provides for restricted driving privileges for certain individuals that fail to comply with a traffic citation. As presented in the Senate version, it would authorize certain individuals to be eligible for restricted driving privileges. It would permit individuals with restricted driving privileges to drive to and from childcare or school drop off and pickup, to purchase groceries and fuel, and to religious worship services. And it would also provide for hardship payment plans and waiver of fines. The House made a few changes. It's the first two provisions are the same, but the House committee removed the provisions concerning the hardship payment plans and the waiver of fines. And then the House Committee of the Whole changed the effective date to January 1st of 2025. And those are the Senate bills.
Okay, continuing on with the sole House bill in conference at this point, Senate sub for House Bill 2144. You'll see it is currently creating the crime of organized retail crime. What came into the Senate from the House was a bill about trusts, and that was enacted last year in 2023, House Bill 2172. So the Senate Judiciary Committee used it as a vehicle for the contents of Senate Bill 415 about the crime of organized retail crime. I can go into detail about that later if you'd like, but essentially, Section 1 is this new crime of organized retail crime, has to do with values of $3,000 or more within a 12-month period from a retailer, severity levels 5 and 4, depending on certain conduct. And then the second section deals with increasing penalties for theft, and it's theft of property that is refunds, money, or merchandise from a retailer with an aggregate retail market value of at least $3,000 but less than $15,000. That's a level 5. And a value of greater than $15,000 is a level 4. So a couple new theft penalty levels. The third component is including organized retail crime in the definition of racketeering activity under the Kansas RICO Act. And the fourth component is authorizing the Attorney General to prosecute specified crimes that are part of an alleged course of criminal conduct that occurred in 2 or more counties. You may recall the legislature enacted some of that jurisdiction last year related to violations of the RICO Act, violations of theft that occur in 2 or more counties. The bill proposes to expand that a bit to crimes that are part of an alleged course of conduct that occurred in 2 or more counties, and that include organized retail crime and any other crime that is part of that alleged course of conduct, or that include theft, or that include violations of the RICO Act. So essentially adding organized retail crime and any other crime that's part of an organized retail crime course of criminal conduct would be the change. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions about any of the bill? Of course, we'll get to them specifically, but any general questions? Anybody? No? Okay. Okay, so the way I'm thinking that this is going to go is we'll start with 2144, just make a few comments, and then I might let Chairman Warren take over since it's Senate bills. We have 1 House bill and 5 Senate bills that are in conference. And so, or we can just, whatever works best for you all is fine with me. We just want to be able to visit and come to some good conclusions here. So I'll just start with Senate or House Bill 2144. I think we're in agreement that we didn't hear that over on the House side. And so we are taking a strong look at it and looking at the three different sections and, figuring out kind of where we might go with it. But at the moment, we're not prepared to offer any amendments or, any thoughts about it yet. That was the reason we non-concurred, was not knowing, we just needed to dig in quite a bit more since we had not had a hearing on it in Judiciary or in any other committee. So that's what I would say about House Bill 2144. Does anyone want to say anything else? Okay. Okay. Anything from y'all?
No, we're familiar with Senate substitute for House Bill 2144. So we're listening, I suppose. So for any further discussion.
So I think that's where we are with 2144. And then I'm kind of looking at this first meeting as, where are we? And then, where are we going to go from here? So, yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Well, then let's turn to Senate Bill 500 and probably some questions for the revisers about some of the changes. Maybe we don't have any further questions, just for clarification. Senate Bill 500 started off from the interim committee. There was a joint interim committee to study the issue of restricted driving privileges being reinstated for those Kansans who had a revoked or suspended driver's license. And our vice chair here, Senate Vice President Wilborn, chaired that interim committee. So a lot of the recommendations, I think, from that interim committee were incorporated into Senate Bill 500, is kind of the genesis of where that came from. And it looks like, is it section 3 and 4? Is that why they're numbered 3 and 4 on the chart? Is that where we might find the biggest, or where we would? There's lots of amendments in Senate Bill 500. So if you would just let us know what the thinking was on, in the chart here, the House version, sections 3 and 4, kind of removing the provision. Well, it's basically section 3, because section 4 just changed the effective enactment date. So on section 3 then.
So if I could, yes, thank you for the question. It was my understanding that were those the hardship payment plan and the waiver of the fines and everything, was that was amended in committee, or that was amended on the floor of the Senate?
In committee.
It's in committee. Okay. Y'all go ahead and speak up over here on the House side, but we felt like that it was that there were parts of that were invasive, as far as looking at different bank accounts and how are we going to figure out what the hardship is. And there was just a lot in there that seemed like it was unnecessary, I would say, but feel free to chime in either if you would agree. And we kind of liked it the way it was first introduced rather than the way that it was amended.
So for the reviser, where are those changes in the bill? Because it's not section 3 of the bill. It's just section 3 on the list of the chart.
Right. They start on page 6 of the bill. So
line 12 there.
Yes. Well, starting, I think at line 14, and we'll make sure, I think, that you have the most recent version of the bill here so you can follow along.
Yes, and our vice chair wants to make a comment. Hold on, and I'll pass the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, that was brought to the committee as a recommendation to have some guidelines. We understand that the judges have discretion, but we're finding out that a lot of them weren't using the discretion. So it was intended to an interested party that eventually signed on supporting this bill wanted that piece. I understand your point. So,
And we're just trying to learn about what some of the changes were. So, and then the rest of the changes.
Sure. So on page 6 there, the the Senate committee added that language in italic about the hardship waiver. The House restored the current law language about the petitioning the court to have those fees waived at any time. And you'll see that in the bold right there. So that's just restoration of what was stricken up in lines 14 through 20. And then same with paragraph 3 there on page 7. Oh yeah, do you have? Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, so that would restore that current law on page 7 there, the paragraph 3, that language about the clerk of the district court, that is restored. That was in the bill as originally introduced, but the Senate committee made that change to a single page uniform hardship waiver language starting in line 9. So the House struck that and put back the paragraph 3 that was in the bill as originally introduced. And then subsection G was added by the Senate committee that put some requirements on the court orders that were issued under the section. And so the House removed those provisions along with subsection H.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions about Senate Bill 500. I don't know if any of the other senators do.
Just to explain to why we changed it to January 1st of 2025, the Department of Revenue had said it's going to be a lot of changes to their system, and they asked us to change that. So that's where the January 1st came in.
Well, if this was just an opportunity to hear about the bills that are in conference, I think we've done that, and we have our chart. So unless there's any other discussion, I think we'll need to recess or adjourn for a later time, or what are your thoughts?
So thank you for bringing up Senate Bill 500. And so did you want to just wait to talk about the other Senate bills? I mean, we've gotten the information, and maybe at the moment we don't have any definite direction from either one of our, as Senate or House yet. But I don't know if anyone else wanted to bring up any of the other Senate bills, but I'm fine looking deeper into them and then coming back, or if you wanted to bring some of them up, that's fine too.
Yeah, we'll need to take a look at what the amendments are to the Senate bills a little bit further and determine what we want to do.
So if I may, and if you want to talk about this or bring it up next time, that's fine. The House sub for Senate Bill 349, which was the annual open records exemptions. When you all non-concurred, I didn't know if you had something specific about that bill, or because it's a pretty common, we do it every year. So if you don't want to answer that at the moment, that's fine. But I didn't know if you had any thoughts that would kind of enlighten us into why you non-concurred.
Sure. No proposed. Let's see. I suppose it would be our position to, if we needed to make an offer, but it's probably a placeholder in case we needed it for something to accomplish the legislative business this session.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, the House is not going back. We're adjourned for the day. How about the Senate?
We go back in at 4:00. So yes, we're in recess until 4:00.
Okay, so would you like to reconvene today, or do you want to take a look at all of this and try to come back tomorrow? What works for you all?
So Senate Judiciary has a conference committee with House Child Welfare and Foster Care at 3:30 today. So we'll need to be aware and attend that. And in the meantime, we'll be taking a look at the bills in conference and be looking at making an offer where we need to, and I assume the House will be doing the same. So, and then if we need to, I suppose at 4:00 we could call another conference committee. And we have one of our ranking member has conference committee, House and Senate transportation at 4:30. Senate transportation with House Commerce. There we go. Okay, so to be exact. So we'll look at the schedule and there may be an announcement at 4:00. So you're good for tomorrow morning. You don't have any other, this is your conference committee. So, okay.
I know you all are very busy and on many conference committees, so maybe tomorrow morning is best. I don't know if you all have anything planned yet, but
Not yet. Right. We'll take a look. Yeah, we're both on the floor at 10, both chambers are. So, and there might be caucus or calendar before then, but has not been yet announced as far as I'm aware.
okay.
So,
And
we'll have to wait and
did
see.
we?
So please stay tuned, I suppose, for some notice about a conference
Yep,
committee.
and thinking probably in the morning sometime before 10. Does that make sense?
Possible 9:00. So, but
Okay.
not before 9:00. So
That sounds good. That sounds great.
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.
Adjourned.